Hello everybody, Mr. Matthews here, Health for Students, Macbeth revision. How much can you remember? Been off school for a long time, so let's refresh your memory. This is going to be fairly shortish, not going to be a huge amount of time, but some key points. So let's have a look. So if someone came up to you and said, what are the opening lines of the play? Well, you've got the three witches. When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the fighting has ended, when the battle's been lost and won. That, of course, is not when the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. That's a kind of a modern translation of Shakespeare's language, which hasn't worked very, very well. Hurly-burly done is far better. But I think it's done so that young people can get access to the play more because the words are more modern. I don't think it actually works. But when shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, and in rain? So you've got the three witches, and they create this atmosphere of the supernatural, of a sort of spooky sort of beginning, and also, of course, witches were felt to be able to raise storms, and King James I, who saw Macbeth, he believed in witchcraft and even wrote a book about it. So, what did the witches say about Macbeth? The witches foretell that Macbeth shall be Thane of Cawdor and king, that is, King of Scotland. They also foretell that Banquo will be lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy yet much happier, and shall beget kings, though he be none. So that's a reference to the fact that Banquo was supposed to be an ancestor of King James I. And of course, it is true that Banquo will not be king, but he'll be happier, even though in the end he was killed by Macbeth because he did not go against the social order. He did not commit crimes in the way that Macbeth did. He was happy when he died, as in the sense that he didn't have anything on his conscience. Macbeth cannot understand why he's put down as Thane of Cawdor and king. The Thane of Cawdor lives, and so forth. So he thinks to himself, what is this all about? And of course, the thing is, it's all about ambition. So if you ask the question, what is the great weakness of Macbeth? It is ambition. Let's have a look at some quotes. If chance will have me king, my chance may crown me without my stir. Macbeth hopes in an aside that fate, not murder, may bring him his kingdom instead. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. Vaulting ambition. So it's like as if he's vaulting a horse in a gym. Vaulting ambition. Macbeth has nothing but his ambition to drive him to commit the deed and to act rashly. So the great weakness of Macbeth is very much ambition. If you ask the question about Lady Macbeth, does she wish that she were male? The answer would seem to be yes, because it is a world dominated by men. She has to play second fiddle to her husband. She can achieve her ambition through her husband, not through herself. And so this is her classic lines: "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose. If chance will have that's a different quotation. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood, stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose. Unsex me. I want to be a man. I want to be a man, I want to be my husband, and then I will kill Duncan. Because it seems as if he is not, hasn't got the guts to actually kill Duncan. So he's taunting him. She is taunting him for his lack of character there. So Lady Macbeth does wish that she were male. Definitely. Next question you might ask. Can you remember the scene about the dagger? Well, let's read through it first of all. Macbeth is going along the chamber towards where Duncan is sleeping. Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat oppressed brain? So, he wants to kill King Duncan, and yet he knows it's wrong. So there's a kind of battle going on in his mind between killing Duncan and not killing Duncan. And he can see the dagger, but he can see that dagger has blood on it, because obviously if he kills the king, it will be covered in blood. Come, let me clutch thee, have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat oppressed brain? What I think is important about this passage is that it shows that he has this tremendous ambition to be the King of Scotland. And in order to realise that ambition, he must kill King Duncan. But on the other hand, he knows it's wrong. He's not completely evil, Macbeth. He's got a conscience. He knows the difference between right and wrong. And he's aware that it would be the wrong thing to do. So that's the battle that's going on in his mind. And in the end, of course, he lets his ambition override his sense of right and wrong. Why is the killing of Duncan so wicked? Well, you've probably been told about the fact that kings were believed to be put in their position by God, the divine right of kings, which King James I, who was on the throne at the time, he would certainly have believed that. So would Queen Elizabeth I, who would be the queen for most of Shakespeare's life. But it's not just that. It's the fact that he is a loyal servant of Duncan. He is Duncan's general. He is Duncan's friend. He is Duncan's. He is expected to give loyalty to Duncan, and of course, he's given him hospitality by taking him into his castle. To take a king into the castle and then to kill the king, that is pretty awful. And of course, it's not a fair fight. He's murdering somebody that can't fight back. He's asleep. He's vulnerable. It is intentional. It is what we call homicide. It is what they say in the American crime programs, first-degree murder. Everything about it is very, very wicked. He's taking away the life of the king, taking away one of God's anointed. So it's almost like he's killing God, because he's killing somebody that God has put into a position of power to act on behalf of God. He's committing the crime of regicide. So I think you need to put that word down, regicide, R-E-G-I-C-I-D-E. Regicide means the killing of a king. Regicide is the killing of a king. Okay? Pretty nasty thing to do. And of course, that dagger is soon going to be red. So therefore, that's why he says, is this a dagger I see before me, and it's covered in blood? Because he knows that is obviously what will happen if he goes through with the deed, which he does. The other thing is that Lady Macbeth, having taunted him to do that, he does that, and then he goes on to kill other people. whereas Lady Macbeth doesn't kill anybody. So it's strange that she's got all the violent talk, all the big talk, but doesn't really go through with anything. Whereas Macbeth, who seems uncertain about what he's going to do, once he's made the killing of Duncan, once he's done that, he can't stop them. Why was Banquo murdered? Now, Macbeth didn't kill Banquo himself. He got other people. He got his contract killers to kill Banquo. But Banquo was murdered for two reasons. One, he knew deep down that Macbeth had killed Duncan, and also the prophecy. Remember that the witches had said, had made this prophecy about him. If we go back to the prophecy of the witches about Banquo, just to remind you, and in some ways to remind me as well. I think that's no. So look, yeah, that's the one. The witches foretell that Banquo will be lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy yet much happier, and shall beget kings though he be none. So in a sense, he is a rival. Macbeth sees Banquo as a possible rival who must be taken out, and therefore that's why he's taken out. So why does the ghost of Banquo haunt Macbeth? When he's at the dinner table and he's feasting, he sees the ghost of Banquo and no one else can see the ghost. So in a sense, I think it seems to be suggesting that his conscience is tearing him apart. He knows he's done wrong. He knows that by killing Duncan he's done wrong. It's brought him no happiness. It's brought him no peace of mind whatsoever. And the killing of Banquo has made things even worse. So therefore now he sees the ghost of Banquo. And it is something which terrifies him because he knows that he has committed this terrible wrong in murdering his one-time friend Banquo, and he's murdered the king as well. He's getting the bad dreams. He's getting the nightmares because of his wickedness. Okay? If you ask the question, why does Macbeth think he will never be destroyed? Because he goes to the witches again. They say, beware Macduff, none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Well, everybody's born of a woman, so Macbeth says, well, I'm safe. Macbeth shall never vanquished be until great Burnham wood to high Dunsinane hill. How can a wood climb up a hill? It's impossible. So therefore, he thinks he's completely safe, not realising, of course, that that Macduff was from his mother untimely ripped, and they used the branches as camouflage to climb up Dunsinane. So in the end, he will be defeated, but he thinks that is clearly evidence that he will be completely safe. What happens to Lady Macduff and her son? After Macbeth flees to England, Lady Macduff believes that he's dead and informs her son of his fate. She's not emotionally affected by this fact, and then soon after the news of her husband's death, she is murdered along with her son by a murderer that was hired by Macbeth. This is one of the most vicious and violent scenes, where Lady Macbeth is raped as well as being murdered, and her son is cut to pieces. It is very, very graphically violent, and often in productions of Macbeth there's a lot of screaming in the background, and you can hear the screams of Lady Macduff, and it's pretty awful. It's a very, very horrible crime. Notice that Macbeth, he committed the first crime of killing the king himself, but now he gets others to do the dirty work in terms of Banquo and Lady Macduff and her son. He's hiring out the killers. He's keeping his hands nice and clean. Remember the dagger again? This is quite interesting, I think. Is this a dagger that I see before me? Now, obviously, if you kill yourself, if you thrust the dagger in, you'll be covered in blood. But now what happens is that Macbeth hires other people to do the killing for him. So his hands are lily white, and other hands are full of blood. The contract killers do his dirty work. Okay? So let's get back to Lady Macbeth. So she is murdered. If you remember what happens to Lady Macbeth, she can't sleep at night. And she's obsessed with blood as well, because she initially manipulated her husband in order that he committed the first crime, which was to kill King Duncan. So she has blood on her hands. Blood on her hands, and she can't sleep at night. And in the end, this leads to suicide. So Lady Macbeth, after having made some violent pronouncements, unsex me here and so forth, comes across as very, very vicious indeed. And yet, when push comes to shove, she's very sorry for what she's done. Very sorry indeed. So, last question. Who kills Macbeth? And the answer is, of course, Macbeth. So Macbeth wants revenge. His children are murdered. His children are murdered. His wife is murdered. Therefore, he wants revenge. And he is going to kill Macbeth and returns with Malcolm, the new king of Scotland, with Macbeth's head. Then yield thee, coward. He will kill Macbeth in the end. He is the avenging angel. He is providence. The idea of providence is the idea that God will eventually bring justice to the world. Those who are wicked will be punished. They cannot escape the providence of God. And therefore Macbeth is the arm of providence. Okay? So that is my short little loom lecture, just a bit of revision on Macbeth. Thank you for listening.